Hi, this is Chris, and we are taking a look at SAT Practice Test 3. This is Section 3, and we're going to look at questions 5 and 6 in this video. So for question 5, they say if 5 over x equals 15 over x plus 20, what is the value of x over 5? And for this, we should approach this with our classic approach. Anytime we see two fractions set equal, we can cross multiply. So that should be something that we kind of think of as an automatic response whenever we see that. And here, if we cross multiply, 15 times x is a little bit easier. That's just 15x. But then when you have 5 times x plus 20, keep in mind that you have to distribute the 5 to both terms. A lot of times I see students who maybe don't write this out fully, and then they write something like, oh, okay, distribute the 5, and it's 5x plus 20. And then they continue from there and potentially miss this question. So just make sure that you're careful. And I prefer actually writing it out like this, where you do it in 2 steps. So you put the 5, and then in parentheses put the expression when you have more than one term, just to keep track of everything. And then from here we can distribute that 5 to both pieces. We have 15x equals 5x plus 100. Subtract 5x from both sides, we get 10x equals 100. Divide by 10, we get x equals 10, and we see 10 as an answer choice, but please be careful. I know I say this all the time. You really need to look at what the question is asking, because they don't just want x, they want x over 5. And you can almost guarantee that in terms of answer choices, they'll give you an answer choice that is the correct value for x without doing the additional step of what they're asking for in the question. And in this case, we'd have to divide x by 5. 10 over 5 is going to give us 2, which is answer choice C. And I'll just write that out here so we see the math on it. C is our correct answer here, and too often I do see students end up selecting answer choice A who did all the math correctly, but were maybe a little bit careless or a little bit hasty with the reading of the actual question. Up next, let's take a look at question 6. Here we see a system of equations, and they want to know the value of x minus y. So in order to figure that out, we have to figure out how we can eliminate one of these variables to try to solve for the value of another variable. And to do that, so you can either try to solve by substitution or elimination. And I am a huge advocate for being really comfortable with elimination, because in a situation like this is a classic example of a situation where substitution can get really messy. If you were to try to isolate x or y, so let's say, for example, I take this first equation and I say, oh, I'm going to try to use substitution. Let me get x by itself. So that would be 2x equals 3y minus 14. And then if I divide both sides by 2, now I start getting into some improper fractions, or if you write it out as a decimal, it's going to be a little bit messy. And then to have to plug this in for x in the other equation, we can see that our math there is only going to get even messier. So it's not that that's incorrect, right? You would still get the correct answer, but it's going to make it a little bit more challenging. So let's see if we can use elimination and have that be a little bit easier on us. And the reason that that's important to keep in mind is that this happens to be the no calculator section. So if you can eliminate some tricky math, eliminate the need to deal with fractions or decimals, it's going to make some of those calculations just a little easier on you and probably allow you to get through the question a little faster. So to use elimination, we have to try to multiply these equations by some sort of coefficient to cancel out a variable, and it doesn't really matter which one, if you want to cancel out your x's or cancel out your y's. So some of this is going to be personal preference. I always like to make the variable that I'm trying to cancel out positive in the top equation and then negative in the bottom, so that when they add together they will sum to 0. So here I would multiply, to get rid of my x's, I would multiply this top equation by 3. So when I distribute that 3, I'll have a positive 6x, and then I'll multiply this bottom equation by negative 2, so that when I distribute, I'll have a negative 6x. And so I'll write that out down here just so it's a little bit easier to follow, but that would be 6x minus 9y equals negative 42. for that top equation, remember, you do have to distribute to each term. Don't forget to multiply whatever that value is times the constant on the other side of the equal sign. That's oftentimes a step that students can overlook. And then for the second equation, we get negative 6x plus 4y equals 12. And now we combine these, the x's cancel. That'll leave us with negative 5y equals negative 30. And we divide by negative 5, and we'll get y equals 6. Now, once you have that, you can plug that in for either equation. So it doesn't really matter which one you pick here. If I'm plugging in y, I might pick the second equation just because the coefficient on y here, negative 2, is a little smaller than negative 3. Again, it's really not going to make a huge difference on this particular problem, but that's just my natural instinct, is if I can limit the amount of math that I have to do, or work with smaller numbers, it's always a little bit more favorable, at least for me. So here, 3x minus 2 times 6. So we're just plugging in the 6 for y in this bottom equation here. And that's going to be equal to negative 6. So 3x minus 12 equals negative 6. Add 12 to the other side. We'll get 3x equals positive 6. Divide by 3. X will equal 2. Now I have a value for x and a value for y. And again, we just want to always double check what's the question actually asking us to do. They want x minus y. And 2 minus 6 will give us negative 4, which is answer choice C. And that's how we tackle a system of equations. And this is definitely something that you will see. So if you're uncomfortable with system of equations style questions, make sure to do a few practice problems, and feel free to watch and rewatch as many videos on it as you need in order to build that comfort level, because I guarantee that is in fact something you will see on test day. In our next video, we'll dive into questions.